We are in week 2 of a series we're calling Inside Story. Every single person is living out a unique story. Every moment of your day is writing the story of your life. And what we're doing in this series is we're taking a break from looking at how our story plays out outside of us, and we're looking at the story that we're telling inside. Because we believe that your greatest life is actually lived from the inside out. We've been talking about this unique big idea. We've been unpacking it over this last week and doing some stuff online to help unpack this big idea. And if you missed last week, it was pretty important. We set up the concept that we're going to continue building on today. You can get caught up really easily by going to citychurchwest.com, clicking on the watch button. If you're on your smartphone, you drop the little drop-down menu, click the watch button. The big idea for this series is the voices in your head control the story of your life. So I feel like we're all on the same page. I'd like for you to say that with me. The voices in your head control the story of your life. We're going to continue unpacking that today. A few years ago, Katie and I were getting ready for bed. We laid down right before we got ready to kind of pass out. We started having this conversation. She had been gone for that evening. She was at some friends of ours' house that another friend had come in and completely remodeled this entire house. And man, this guy did an incredible job. And I know he did an incredible job because Katie went on and on and on about just how good of a job this guy had done. Now, here's something you need to know for the context of this story to make sense, is that I am not a naturally gifted handyman, right? And I've come a long way in the last couple of years, but when this conversation was taking place, my peak achievement was really like replacing light bulbs, all right? And I don't like to brag, but I was really good at it. Like long arms, I could get up in the ceiling fans, no problem. And I didn't think that was a problem. I just thought, man, people are gifted in different ways. Some people are good at one thing, not good at another, no big deal. Not a problem for me. I don't need to be handy. However, that night, listening to my wife go on and on about another man's incredible handiwork, I started realizing that it might just be a little bit of a sore spot in my life. It was the craziest thing. Out of nowhere, I started having this dialogue in my head, these voices in my head that started saying things that frankly are irrational and inexcusable. I'm just telling you what happened in real time. I started thinking, the more she described in every detail of this guy's work, I started thinking things like, who does this guy think he is? And what's he doing impressing my wife like this? Does this guy think he's better? Do I have to fight this guy now? What? I felt underappreciated. I was like, I changed like 3 light bulbs last week. Did Katie see that? I didn't get a thank you for that. And the more she talked, the angrier and the angrier I got. And the worst part is that this is not only like the sweetest guy that we know, not only is he a friend of mine, he may or may not be one of the worship leaders here, but that's okay. Moving on. There's no excuse for it, but I did. I just found myself in that moment getting angrier and angrier. And today we're going to take some time and we're going to talk about anger, because we all have those moments in our life. And what I want us to do, really, as we're talking about emotion, as we're talking about the voices in our head and how they control the story of our life, I want us to take a really high-level view of anger. I want us to get up like 50,000 feet and see it for what it really is and how it really affects our life. And I want to suggest to you that anger really only has 2 outcomes. Anger either causes us to give up or to get busy. Anger causes us to give up or to get busy. And one of the best ways, the first example I thought of when I was putting this message together of anger causing us to give up is when you're doing something really tedious. When you're trying to work on something and you just keep having failure after failure. You're trying to get the thread through the needle and you're like, if I miss this one more time, it's going to be. The other day I was trying to fix our shower. See how far I've come? Someone else had to come do it eventually. But I was trying, and so, I got out the Allen wrench, and it was too small. I got the next size, it was too big. So I went to the other pack. I went too small, the next one too big. And I was about to lose my mind. It's the small, tedious things. And these moments of anger that cause us to give up led to one of my favorite viral videos of all time. So check this guy out.
He's right here.
Kidding?
My favorite part of that video, I never noticed until we showed it today. My favorite part is when the little kid comes up and goes, push it that way. Like in your moment of your most fury and your kid walks in the room and is like, Dad, this doesn't seem very difficult. Why are you having so much trouble? You're grounded. Get out of my face. I don't want to see you right now. And this is all because the voices in our head control the story of our life. Our anger is either going to cause us to give up or to get busy. So last week, we set the context for really understanding how this applies to our life. And like I said, you can go online and see the full version of this. I'm going to walk you through this concept in a much quicker, truncated version. What we saw is that all of your life is an infinite number of experiences that lead to action. Experiences that lead to action. The cause and the effect. But we discovered something amazing, that out of all creation, everything on planet Earth, humans stand apart and are unique in the fact that we have a step in between the things that we experience and the action that we take. And in this gap between our experience and our action is what we're calling our inner narrative. This is the voices in your head. This is the dialogue that you have running with yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the reason that this matters is because the action that we take in life is not tied to our experiences. Rather, it is tied to what our inner narrative decides about our experience. Let me slow that down because this is crucially important. Our actions, the things we do in life, our behaviors, our patterns are not tied to our experiences in this life. They are tied to what the voices in our heads, our inner narrative, decides about the things that we experience. This is why I could lay in bed with my wife, hearing her tell a story of the sweetest man on earth using his time, energy, and resources to remodel someone else's house and react in the only way that doesn't make sense, in anger. Because it wasn't about what I was experiencing in that moment. It was about what my inner narrative decided about that experience. That is what led to my action and reaction. The voices in my head were controlling the story of my life. The voice of insecurity that said, maybe I'm not manly enough for my wife. She seems to really be into this, and I don't have those skills. The voices of rejection, the voice of comparison. This guy think he's better than me. Is this guy better than me? And pretty soon, an angry inner narrative led me to give up. I gave up on being a good husband in that moment. I gave up on the conversation. I just shut down everything that she was saying. And I gave up on building in some skills that were readily accessible to me to become a more handy person. I stopped living a better life. Instead of getting busy, strategizing, figuring out why I was having these emotions, improving myself, I gave up. Those are your two options in anger. You're either going to get busy or you're going to give up. There are instances in our life where it is good to be angry, We get angry about injustice. We get angry about suffering. We get angry about racism and marginalized people. We get angry when we see that the church has lost all of its influence in our society. We get angry when we wake up one day and realize that our actions have hurt our marriage or have put a wedge between us and our children. And when we get angry in those moments, we can choose to get busy, to start righting some wrongs, to start living the life that God created us to live. But it's complicated because the vast majority of people live their entire lives unaware that there is a step between what they experience and the action that they take in life. And when you're unaware of your inner narrative, what happens is you stand on your actions, you stand on your behaviors, and you point back at your experiences. Of course I'm angry. Have you seen the political climate in the world today? Of course I'm angry. You'd be angry too if you had my boss. Of course I'm angry. My spouse doesn't care about me, and my children disrespect me, and I can't keep enough money in the bank. We become a victim of our circumstances because we blame our actions on our experiences. And the reality is, 99.999% of what you experience, you have no control over. But one of the greatest gifts, one of the greatest blessings that God has given us is control over our mind, our thoughts, our inner narrative. He has given us control over the voices in our head. And if you want to live a powerful life, a life of purpose and potential, if you want to seek out the calling that God has placed in you to make a difference in the world and leave a dent in the universe, then instead of looking at your experiences as the source of your angry actions, you look to your inner narrative and begin to correct them. I wonder if anyone here is suffering because of a consistently angry inner narrative. Maybe your relationships are in turmoil. It's hard for you to keep a job. Maybe you have trouble keeping your language under control. All of those things are giving up. We give up on our relationships. We give up on our careers. We give up on our dreams. We give up on our calling. And giving up looks like a lot of different things. Sometimes we give up and we seek vengeance on our own. Sometimes we give up and we try to numb our pain or escape it or ignore it. Sometimes we just stuff all of our anger deeper and deeper inside of us, waiting someday for it to explode. If we want to live the life we were called to live, we have to learn how to navigate an angry inner narrative. Our emotions are not bad things. God hardwired them inside of us. Anger is not bad in and of itself. It's how you choose to process it. If you constantly give up because of your anger, then you're on a path to sabotage your significance. But if your anger causes you to get busy living the life God called you to and righting the wrongs in your life, you can begin to unleash the power of God's promises in your life. This was the intro to my message. Are we ready to get going? Are we good? Last week we looked at the very beginning of our Bibles, the book of Genesis. We learned about creation, the first couple, Adam and Eve. We saw the moment that our inner narratives were first broken. And we now live in the historical heritage of that one moment. We live in a very broken, fallen world full of suffering and heartache and disappointment. And we're going to pick up the story almost right where we left off. In the book of Genesis, it says that after the fall of man, Adam and Eve conceived and they gave birth to two sons. The older brother named Cain and the younger named Abel. We're going to read part of their story in Genesis chapter 4. It says, now Abel, the younger brother, kept flocks. He was a shepherd. And Cain worked the soil. He was a farmer. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. And the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his, he did not look with favor. And so Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. And now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel, and he killed him. And isn't it incredible how quickly the world began to decline. In just one generation, the first offspring, anger had infiltrated the world at such a high level that it led to cold-blooded murder. We're going to walk back through these verses we just read at a slower pace to help us understand how to overcome our own angry inner narratives, how to keep from giving up, and how to start getting busy living the life that God has for us. The brothers were all grown up in this story. They both had unique jobs. Abel was the shepherd, Cain was the farmer, and the time came for the brothers to bring an offering to God. Now, at this time in history and how God was interacting with people, Jesus had not yet come to be the final offering and the final sacrifice for all sin for all time. So from time to time, people had to bring offerings to God, not only to show reverence, but also these offerings became for the forgiveness of their sins. And God had some requirements for these offerings. Now we see that God accepted what Abel brought. He rejected what Cain brought. And at the end of the day, it led Cain to murder his brother. And so why? The question is why? Why did God accept Abel's firstborn lamb? And why did he reject the offering of fruits and vegetables that Cain brought? And this is something people like to argue about. Theologians, philosophers, they like to try to figure out, well, why did this happen? And maybe it was because God only accepts an offering that requires death. It has to have blood. And Cain only brought fruits, and it wasn't a high enough offering. And some people think, well, maybe it was, the amount, or, I tried to pull God even rejected the vegetables. Why do I have to eat the vegetables at dinner? I don't understand. Nobody went for that. My wife still makes me vegetables. The answer is in the text. I've highlighted some key words to help us understand. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions, from some of the firstborn of his flock. If you notice, it says that Cain brought some for his offering. And it says that Abel brought the fat portions. He brought the prime cuts. He brought the cut of steak that's on the side of the menu that I don't have enough money to order from at this point in my life. And he brought it of the firstborn. This is about priority. Cain brought some, and the way that this is written in the Hebrew, it makes it seem very haphazard. It's almost like Cain woke up and was like, oh, it's offering day, here we go. Put some stuff together, bring it before the Lord. While Abel was waiting. It's offering day. I've been saving the firstborn. This one goes to the Lord. He's going to get the choice meat. He's going to get the best that I have to offer. And a lot of times we get into this trap where we think that the Christian life is about what we do, when the reality is God isn't looking as much of what it is we're doing. He's looking at how we are doing it. And Cain and Abel, the difference is not just in what they brought, it's how they brought it. Abel had prioritized God. He had organized his life around giving this offering, while Cain gave God the leftovers. It's not about what you're doing, it's about how you're doing it. Some of you love to worship during the music. Man, your hands in the air like you just don't care. And here's the deal. For your sake and the sake of everyone else in the room, we're not going to give you a microphone, because it's not about what you do. It's not about your position in the seats or on the stage. It's about how you're doing it. And if you're worshiping in the seats, hands up, slightly off pitch, a little bit annoying your neighbor, but it's all out with all of your heart, it is a sweeter offering to God than the most talented singer in the world standing on the stage singing half-heartedly. It's not about what, it's about how. And some of us get confused in our giving. And you don't like that we stand up and we tell you to give every single week. You need to give. We're going to remind and encourage you to give. There's 2 ways. We try and make it easy for you. You don't like that. You have an inner narrative that says pastors are crooks. I've seen the pastor stand on stage, tell his congregation God told him they need to buy him a $60 million jet. You've seen the Crystal Cathedral. You've seen the hucksters robbing people blind in the name of Jesus, and you're just not about it. And the reality is you're thinking about what? And what God is looking for is how. It's not even about how much. We teach tithing. Give 10% of everything you have. But it's not about what. It's why I keep saying, if you aren't giving, give $100 a month. Because it's not about what. And if you give $10 with a pure heart and full of joy, it is a sweeter blessing than someone who's giving 20% begrudgingly. It is about the how. God is looking for people who are not going to organize their offering around their finances, but who will organize their finances around their offering. God deserves and demands to be put first. Abel gave the first, and Cain gave some. And God rejected it not based on what it was, but on how he gave. And Cain did not handle this rejection well. And we've already read the story. It leads to him taking a life. But we have to remember that angry actions are not based on our experiences. Angry actions are based on what the voices in our head decide about the things that we are experiencing in our lives. And we don't know, it's not in the Bible, but I assume that Cain's inner narrative started going pretty wild. The voice of rejection, the voices of comparison to his perfect little brother, the voice of embarrassment, being rejected in front of the Lord himself. And it was right in that moment that God came directly to Cain. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" God is calling Cain out. He's saying, you are trying to live like you are a victim of the things that you're experiencing. You're pushing the blame on everybody but yourself. But if you do what is right, if you will take control of what I have given you the power to control, if you'll get your mind right, instead of giving up and seeking vengeance on your own, if you will get busy organizing your life around me, you will also be accepted. God continued to warn him, if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you. But you must and you can rule over it. Sin is crouching at your door. In Hebrew, door is usually a metaphor for your mind. Sin is coming for you. And a lot of times we think that in order for the enemy to win against the movement of Jesus, that we all have to give into these huge temptations. We all have to have the affair, and we have to get on the hard drugs, and we have to become an alcoholic, and we have to embezzle, and we have to leave our children and disown them and kick them out and live a life of crime, when the reality is all the enemy needs to win is to get you to give up. Give up on your purpose. Give up on your calling. Give up on being a part of the movement of Jesus, on thinking that you can make any kind of change during this lifetime. All he needs is for you to give up. Cain gave up. He invited his little brother out to the same field where he had collected a subpar offering, and he murdered him. And I wonder if any of us are living with a consistently angry inner narrative that's leading us to consistently angry actions. I wonder if any of us are standing at our behaviors and patterns and worse ways, and we're looking back at our experiences, living like a victim when Jesus came and died for you so that you could live in victory. God asked Cain 3 questions. These 3 questions are the key to us claiming victory over angry inner narratives. I want to ask you right where you are, just to close your eyes, create some space for yourself and for the people around you. I want to ask you for a level of honesty that probably exceeds your level of comfort. I want to ask you to get real in this moment. And I want to walk you through the same 3 questions that God asked Cain. First, he asked, why are you angry? And I want to ask you the same questions. Why are you angry? What are your triggers in life? What are you experiencing? God was questioning Cain's experience. Why exactly are you angry? Maybe it's at work where you feel disrespected or forgotten about. Maybe it's at home with a difficult spouse or disrespectful kids. Maybe your anger shows up when you're alone, because if you're really honest, the person that you're most mad at is yourself. Why are you angry? If you can get honest about the things that are causing you anger, you can answer the second question. God asked Cain, why is your face downcast? He was asking about his inner narrative, because often our emotions are exposed by our expression. Why is your face downcast? What have the angry voices in your head decided about the things you're experiencing in life? How is your inner narrative distorting your experiences? What lies have you allowed to creep in? What are the voices you're experiencing that are convincing you to give up on the relationship, to give up on the calling, to give up on the dream, to give up on the career, to give up on your children, to give up on your parents, to give up on God? And the third step is your actions. God asked, are you doing what is right? What is an angry inner narrative causing in your life? Is it causing you to give up? Or is it causing you to get busy? To get busy spending time with God, to get busy seeing how He wants to use you, to get busy being the hands and feet and doing the kingdom work as ambassadors of God that you were called to do, to get busy finally telling the truth and speaking it out, to get busy as a part of the movement. God, we come to you and we know we're broken and we know that we're jacked up and we know that sometimes we're angry and we don't always understand it. But today, give us the courage and the clarity to take back control of the voices in our head, so once again we can get back in control of the story that you are so desperate to write with our lives. A story of power and of movement, of change, of hope, a story of love. I pray that people who are on paths to give up would instead turn around and start getting busy. You gave your life for us to show us, God, that you have designed us and created us. Every beat of our heart, every synapses firing in our brain, our flesh, the blood coursing through our veins, all of it is yours, God. We are not meant to live as victims. We are meant for victory. I ask that today we would stand up. We would claim it, God. We would not run to the things of the world. We would not numb it. We would not try to escape it or ignore it or fight it. That we would stand up and recognize who we are in you. In the power of Jesus' name we pray. Amen.